Welcome everybody to Love Books. It's absolutely wonderful to have such a big crowd here tonight. Thank you so much for coming. It is always such a huge pleasure to have Marita van der Vyver at Love Books. And I think no matter what you write, Marita, whether it's fiction, non-fiction, or a cookbook, you always get such a wonderful, warm and welcoming response. You are much loved. It even says that on the back of your book. So wonderful to have you here tonight. Thank you so much. I started reading my year of fear and freedom last night. And I do kind of wish that I'd started earlier. It's absolutely wonderful to read. It's honest, it's relatable, and of course it's beautifully told. So I'm looking forward to settling down over the weekend with this. And congratulations, Marita, on what I'm sure is going to be another hit. Marita is so well known in her career now that she no longer even has that little bit about the author that goes on the back of the book or even anywhere in the book. I couldn't find it anywhere, Marita. So here is a very quick summary of what has been an extraordinary writing career. She started off her career with 3 novels for adolescents, and then she wrote her first adult novel, Griet skryf 'n Sprokie, which I'm sure, as you all remember, became a bestseller. And it was so huge that even I, as an English-speaking young adult, remember the book and the buzz around it. It won the Mnet Prize, it won the Eugene Marais Prize, and it won the R.T. Cartier Prize in 1992. Since then, she has been a full-time writer of fiction for readers of all ages. She's written in total over 20 books, and her novels have been translated into more than 10 languages. Marita, it's just lovely to have you here tonight. Welcome.
Thank you. Dankie.
And then chatting to Marita this evening is Michelle Magwood, who also barely needs an introduction. Michelle is a veteran book journalist, absolutely one of the best that we have. She's also an editor and a judge for the Sunday Times Literary Awards this year. Michelle is also at last about to publish her own book. Yes, it's called Brahman Hills, The Making of a World-Class Garden, and it's the story of a magnificent garden in KZN. It's coming very soon. We don't quite know when, but it should be this month, so keep your ears and eyes open for it. Michelle, over to you.
Thanks so much, Kate. It's always lovely to be at Love Books, of course. I mean, it's the absolute centre of cultural and life in Johannesburg. I mean, it really is. Kate is extraordinary for what she has created here. And it's such a pleasure to be talking to Marita. We've had the pleasure a few times over the years. And do you know, the last time we spoke was at the very, very end of 2019, and it was her book about the border. It was called Borderline, and there we were at
Franschhoek?
No, we were at Izzy's guest house. Yes, and we were having a glass of wine, talking away, and little did we know that within months we could not have seen what was coming down the highway towards us. Absolutely, and there was Marita. Your life was so settled. Your children were grown up. You were so at home and in Provence. You and Alain had built an absolute life there. And then your followers on Facebook, we were all gutted when we read that you'd lost your house and that you had to start over. And it was just shattering. So how did it come about?
Thanks. Hello, everybody. Yes, the background of the book, which I tell quickly in the first part, because it's crazy to take on a journey like this. It's not for nothing that it's called My Year of Fear and Freedom, because there was a lot of fear involved. But sometimes you get pushed into something, and there's a set of unfortunate circumstances, of which COVID was a major player. And at first I wanted to just write the book about telling my story and not really go into the background, just say something like, unfortunate circumstances forced us to sell our house. And then I realized, and it was also advice from 2 early readers, that no, I have to give the reader the background. And that made me very scared because you feel very vulnerable if you write a memoir. This is a travel book, but in the form of a memoir also. And not only because you make yourself so vulnerable, but even more so the people who live with you. And in this book, my fellow traveler, my life partner, my partner in traveling in life, Alain, the Frenchman, I call him in the book, it had also to do with what happened to him. COVID was a big shock to me as a journalist writer, trying to precariously make a living in Europe, and because suddenly everything just was gone. This little financial rug, it was never a big mat anyway, it's a little prayer rug, was out from under our feet. All the other things that I could do, to like presenting writing courses and doing a bit of journalism and traveling. Sometimes I was even a travel guide. All that disappeared. So I just had this shrinking income. At the same time, before COVID, my husband suffered a very serious depression episode. He's never been depressed in his life. And one thinks it can't happen to you. But it was so bad that he was on sick leave for a year. He couldn't work. So then that happened before COVID. What happened with the moment COVID struck and isolation? So all the doctors, all the psychologists, all the help for your body, for your mind, I mean, was taken away. Everybody had to close. All the emphasis was on helping people physically survive this horror, this epidemic. And so if you had a depression before COVID, your chances of getting through it on your own with suddenly all the help gone was not very high. So that. And then I also write a little bit about the other, we call it the black dog, depression. And the black dog has this follower coming on his heels. Very often, depression goes with addictions. And it could be alcohol, it could be drugs, it could be food, it could be all kinds of addictions. And Alain, my husband, my beloved, has been a sober alcoholic for many years. I'm saying sober alcoholic because alcoholic is for life, but he's been sober for a very long time. And then, with the depression, he had a backlash. And he started drinking, and it's a vicious circle. Then you drink and you feel guilty, and then you get more depressed. And so it was this perfect storm for us. And we had to sell our house, and we thought, okay, it's going to take us 2 or 3 years to sell it, but at least we can buy ourselves some time, because the previous house took a long time to sell. And then, as fate would have it, the very first people, literally, it was not even on the site. These 2 people came to look at the house, and the next day they made us an offer. So we were looking at each other like, what now? Our house is sold. Where do we go? Where do we live? And then we realized the children, the last one was just out of the house. Alain has just retired a little earlier because of the depression episode than we thought he would. He was getting better. He was with the help. That was at the end of COVID. So, he could see psychiatrists, psychologists, whatever again. AA meetings were opening up again. So things were going better in that way. And then we had this thing, okay, now what do we do now? Why not? We've always dreamt about a long journey one day when he retires, but we wouldn't have been able to afford it if we still had a house to pay and taxes and electricity and water and all that. And suddenly the house was gone, the children were out of the house, and we thought we'd do this. We just go do this crazy thing, we just jump and we go and travel addressless for a while.
But it must have been harder than that. I mean, it must have been unbearable to walk away. How did you find the strength? How did you find that strength?
We didn't have a choice. I think a lot of times in life when we literally, I think in the beginning of the book, it was a little bit like you pushed to a cliff. You can't turn back. Okay, now the house is sold, and I don't have much of an income, and he's retired. His pension is also smaller than we thought it would be, because he was ill the last year. And you just do it. But there was no guarantee that we would survive as a couple, because I was already scared, like many couples, when you're both working or one of the two is working, the retirement can be a very testy period because suddenly you're thrown together all the time. And for years I've actually been nervous because my house is my writing space. The children are out of the house, the husband is away, that's my private space. I need that. And suddenly I thought, oh, if he's going to be there all the time, he's going to irritate the hell out of me. So then we went to the other extreme. We thought, okay, right, this is really a test. It's not just together in a house, it's in a little car for 15 months. We had various cars. We did our journey on 3 continents. And in America, for instance, we rented I call it a hippie van, a hand-painted camper van with flowers on.
We'll get to that.
You're literally together all the time.
Yeah.
If we could survive this, I think we could survive everything.
Absolutely, everything. So how did you plot it? Where did you start? It was getting towards winter, wasn't it?
Yes.
So you had to take that into account.
Absolutely. We had to take that into account, and we had to take into account that the tail end of COVID. So things were changing. Rules and regulations were changing as we were traveling for countries. Some countries have actually started getting out of COVID by then, but then there were new waves, as you know, and strains and so on coming into countries. So we always had to keep that in mind. So we had a vague plan that we're going to spend about 3 months in Europe first, going to visit our children and our family and some friends who we haven't seen in this COVID times, all those lines that have stretched so thin. My son was living in Lausanne, and he started working there just in COVID time. Now, Lausanne in Switzerland is on the border. It's barely 4 hours from where we lived. But because Switzerland is not part of the European Union, all the borders were closed around this little enclave. And I couldn't see my child for I don't know how long. It was just 4 hours away. So we started off by saying, okay, we're going to visit. We have 4 grown-up children in various parts of the country, or even in Switzerland. Start there, visiting Alain's family, my family-in-law in the north of France, and then going over to the last bit of sunshine. So we through Switzerland and Italy to land up in Greece on the Isle of Lesbos, where I've been before because I've presented writing courses there. We knew people there. It was one of the few places in Europe where we could rent a little cottage for about a month at an affordable rate. And also it was in October, it was still reasonably warm in Greece where it was beginning. So then from there we went to America. The idea was either South Africa or America, depending on where the COVID rules allowed us. And then South Africa had we couldn't come to South Africa, it had another strain or something. And borders tightened. So we went, and America opened the borders for people if you had vaccination. So we went there. And a friend who's been living there for many years wanted to come to South Africa. And she contacted me and said, don't you want to come and house sit? Now, this is one of the many jobs I did.
Okay.
Yeah. And it's one of the things that serendipity, many moments of serendipity right throughout. Because if she didn't send me that little email, we were thinking of doing a road trip in a camper van. And okay, a few weeks in a camper van, I'm not really a happy camper. I couldn't see myself for 3 months in a camper van. I needed a house, a bed that doesn't move at some stage. So we could do that.
I'm thinking of the Winnebago. You write that the best travel writing is a ticket to a world of wonder and awe. And that was a very, very good guide for you, and that is certainly what you produce for us in this book. I was interested in so many of the places that you stop off and your views of them. For instance, your views of Paris. And, you know, we have this romanticized picture of Paris. We think we know it. And you're saying, no, there's actually much more to the city than behind the curtains.
Yes. I compare Paris to a very old friend. I start the chapter by saying, I'm not in love with Paris. I don't swoon when I see a picture of the Eiffel Tower with a very photogenic croissant on Instagram or TV series like Emily in Paris, because I think it's a glorified, Disneyfied view of Paris. But I have a deep, deep love for Paris, like you love an old friend, a female friend. You know all her faults. You know you've seen her without makeup. You know that her breath sometimes stinks, and that you know these things. but you still love her. So it's not the kind of love that a groupie has for a rock star. For me, Paris is something that for so many years, it's always been a place that I go back to. I've never lived there for long enough. It's a few weeks at a time. So you could say that me and this friend have never actually shared digs, but I've been close enough to, yes. And so for me, and each time I visit Paris, maybe the secret to any long affair or even friendship is that there should this ability to surprise is that this person never becomes too predictable. It definitely, for me, it definitely works in a romantic relationship. So for Paris is that each time I go there, there's something I haven't seen before, something that surprises me. And this time, because we were traveling at the tail end of COVID, and it was beginning to be winter, and there was a kind of a nostalgia in the air. All the American tourists were gone. I always hated the American tourists when I'm in Paris, and suddenly, I miss them because I think a city like Paris flirts with American tourists. And now she has nobody to flirt with. It's kind of sad.
Yeah. I also loved your, you also went a different route in Italy into places that were tourist-free as well. Because you're coming at the end of the year, at the end of the season, and you saw a very different kind of Italy.
Yes, in the bottom part, the hill of Italy, Puglia, a province, we have old friends. Once again, one of the mottos in the book, there's a playlist that I'll tell you about later, and we made for the book, but that old Joe Cocker song with a little help from my friends. Friends and family along the way helped us in the sense of, in South Africa, sometimes just giving us a stoop to sit on, stoop sitting. And I had to explain that to my Frenchman. So we have very old friends in this, French actually, they live in Seychelles, but Alain's almost from school, he knows them. And Mario is Italian French, and he has a family in that part, and he goes there every year. And we always wanted to visit, but we somehow never got there in summer. There's always other things to do. And then he is also then just retired, like Anna. So they were there in autumn, and we went to visit them and got to meet the whole familia, spent many nights around long tables where everybody speaks Italian, not a word of anything else. And every now and then they remember that we don't understand, and then they would make, like Italians make a few gestures. The food was so nice that we didn't even mind. And so that was that thing of, and they showed us seeing a city, and I found it in many cities along the way. If you go to a place and there's somebody there who lives there, who knows the place from the inside, gives you a different, it can take you away from where the tourist goes, although you're a tourist yourself, but we all want to pretend we're not tourists when we travel. So you go to a place like that, it makes all the difference.
Absolutely. All right, let's jump to America and John Denver and that wagon called Aloha.
The first one was called Aloha.
Yeah.
Yes, so we decided if we're now going to do this road trip camper van, I mean, in America, it's the one place where a road trip is such an American concept. You can't even translate it into Afrikaans, probably not even into French either. We decided, okay, we're going to do this, and we're going to take Route 66, or what's left of Route 66, and we're going to go take the blues route down to New Orleans and Mississippi. And so if we're going to spend 6-7 weeks in a camper van, we might as well make a statement. And I found out after research on internet that there's this company, not a very big company, but in certain cities, they have these hand-painted wagons, camper vans. And you don't know beforehand what you're getting. You might get, we got the hippie flowers and the Hawaiian feel, like aloha, but you might get manga characters. It might be anything. You don't know the color, you don't choose it, you pick up the one. And it was somehow, once again, just kind of seemed that this was right for us, because we were too young for the 60s. But we were influenced for life by the music of that era, by the feelings and the whole thing of the 60s. So here we were finally in our autumn years, Never too late to have a happy childhood. Driving through America on Route 66 with our and listening to rock music very loudly. And that's where the road trip music comes into. And we had then somewhere along the way, right in the story, there was something wrong with this one. You have to read what happened on a hilltop in front of California, and we had to change it for another van, which was then kind of purple, and it was called Lancelot, with knights and shining armor, and that once again, connected me to John Steinbeck, who wrote Travels with Charlie, who was like almost our guidebook going through the south of America, and he called his little camper van he built, literally had somebody build a little house on top of a bucky, because there weren't camper vans in 1960 when he did this trip. And he called it Roxinante, like Don Quixote's horse.
I was intrigued by that Steinbeck thread through the story. It made me want to just go and start reading Steinbeck and that museum that you visited with his little...
Yes,
yeah,
then we could actually meet Roxinante, because the way these things happen, somewhere along the way, a South African, quite by chance, told us, did you know, because I said that I've started reading Travels with Charlie, I didn't know about this book, you know. I knew Steinbeck and I know Grapes of Wrath and all these famous books, but I did not know. And a friend gave us this piece of advice, said, if you're there, you have to read Travels with Charlie in Search of America. It's about these few months he traveled more or less the same route that we did. Once again, not planned. It just happened with his dog, Charlie, his giant poodle. And it's a wonderful book. If I can get a few people to read that book already, then my book would have been worthwhile. And that helped us through. And I used it as a thread because he writes so well, and he says all the time, when you describe a journey or a place, it's different for each person. He stresses that I write about my truth. You come along a month or a year or 10 years later, and it's different for you because you find your truth in the place.
Yeah. Did you went down to New Orleans then, didn't you?
Yes,
okay,
we went.
Let's go there first. I love that particularly because of the French influence, and I was dying to see how it would how it would be assimilated for you, how it would be.
Yes. Steinbeck ended his trip in New Orleans. We began ours because we picked up our camper van on the northeast coast of America in New Jersey. And Steinbeck happened to start because he was living in that start. And he went to the west, and then he traveled through to New Orleans and then back up. So that was kind of the triangle. And we did it straight down to New Orleans and then to the west and then back. New Orleans simply because it was probably on me and the Frenchman's bucket list long before we even knew there was a thing like bucket lists. We both love music and the whole, and blues and rock and all that. And then Katrina happened, the hurricane and all the devastation, and I thought, there goes New Orleans. It's going to be destroyed, and no, maybe I'll never get there anyway, it's fine. But the city managed to reinvent itself, and we have this wonderful South African word, a jol. New Orleans is an eternal jol, 24 hours a day, 7 days a week. There's music everywhere. You cannot believe. But it's a city where you don't go for quiet. And it's noisy. It's sinful. It's hedonistic. You see, on the street, drugs are consumed on the street around you. Everybody is basically drunk around you, which is a challenge because I was traveling with a sober man, so I think that and you also look differently at people, and about the silly women who go for the cheerleaders, what do they call them? No, the cheerleaders, like the bachelorettes.
Oh, God.
It's a big city where girls go, it's become a business because, in the old days we had hen parties before you get married, and then you would get silly with your friends and they would make little rhymes and you had to guess what they give you, whatever. It was a bit like ontgroening when you're in a boarding school. But the Americans, like they do with everything, they professionalize it, they glamorize it. So now it's a thing. You go with your friends before you get married for anything from a weekend to a week. It costs a fortune, and you go and misbehave for one last time before you become a prim and proper madam, Mrs. something. Yeah. And I was just astonished because...
And matching T-shirts.
Yes, matching T-shirts, matching clothes, and they're so silly. They scream all the time, and they take selfies of each other all the time. And then I think, thank heaven, sometimes it's good to be a boomer, because when we did our silly little henna parties or whatever, I mean, we were not that innocent. There was definitely also alcohol involved and silliness. But there weren't cell phones. There wasn't this, everybody seeing how stupid you are as it's happening. So that was one of the strange things.
I imagine, though, that your French palates might have been quite overwhelmed by American food. Or,
yes.
Or insulted by American food.
Except in New Orleans, the Cajun food was actually an experience. But I'm glad you mentioned food, because we are foodies. And we believe with the great French... first great French food writer, Brillat Savarin, he said, the destiny of nations is in the food that they eat. And he had another famous quote, show me what you eat and I'll tell you what you are, or show you what. And I think one of the many ways of getting to know, if you're in a strange place, if you're in an unknown country or region, is to eat the food that the people eat there. So wherever we travel, we really try and do that. Go to small local restaurants and also buy food on the farmers' markets or in the shops, and try and get to. So we did a lot of junk food in America. You cannot not have fast food and junk food. It is the country of donuts. Alain got completely addicted to donuts. He wanted to find the best donut in America. I was kind of I'm a bit of a Calvinist still, that I'm trying. I didn't immediately want to enjoy this junk food so much, so I was hesitant. And then finally, after a week or two, I had one of his donuts, and then I said, now I understand why the Americans all get addicted to donuts and sweet things. There's sugar in everything, and additives. And when you do, the one thing that the French do very well is you get fresh food, and there's not additives, and you become used to food is not packaged in plastic, and of course the portions are so much smaller. That was horrific for us from the start. So, but we had this food thing from the moment we arrived at the airport, and you ask for coffee. Now, in France, we have we drink black coffee without sugar and milk, and it's a small thing, you get a bucket. It's like a 10-gallon bucket with a weak brown mixture that vaguely resembles coffee. So that was on the road. Of course, in New York, San Francisco, places like that, you have baristas, you have beautiful coffee. But if you hit the gas stations, it's hot.
Yeah, with hazelnut juice, hazelnut syrup and whatever in it. But I do want to ask you about parking in Walmart car parks.
Yeah.
That must have been something.
Yes.
So they seem quite agreeable, Walmart, to having people camping in their car parks.
Yes.
Is that right?
Yes. It's one of the few places where you can sleep for free. And we decided we're not going to do that, because in France we often joke about the people who are too stingy to go to to go and pay a little bit of money at a camping site, and they park in front of Leclerc, the big department store. They're less strict about it than to save money, and it's terrible. But it's often Dutch people. I hope there are not too many Dutch people. The Dutch tourists have a bad reputation in France for bringing all their own food and parking on the parking lot instead of... Okay, so forgive me if you're Dutch around here. So we decided there are lots of places where you can stay for free or for not, like state forests, camps that are open. And there's also apps like Hip Camp. It's like Airbnb, but it's for camping and for when you're in a camper van and you go to farms and so on. So we did that. But once or twice, we knew all along that you can park and sleep on the parking area of a Walmart, of any Walmart supermarket. They can't chase you away. And in Memphis, Tennessee, we listened to the music until quite late at night and completely forgot to organize a place to sleep. And then at late at night, there we landed up on a parking area. It wasn't a Walmart, it was another shop, and there was a Cracker Barrel. We slept there. Yeah. It's not nice waking up, because the next morning, then you see how many people in America are real homeless people. That is the one thing I had to tell myself all along. So I'm not homeless. I don't have an address, but I knew at some stage I will have, even if it's a little house much smaller than what I had. I knew
you were houseless, not homeless.
Exactly. Yeah. Like Frances McDormand in the movie Nomadland, which we watched on the flight over. She says houseless, not homeless. But we met lots of real Nomadlanders. And it's very shocking to see. Because it's not even always camper vans where you have a bed and in cars, in sedan cars, and you see the guy getting out in the morning and he slept in his car and now he puts on his little suit jacket and his tie and he's going to office. And maybe they don't even know in the office he's sleeping in his car in front of Walmart. Which made us, I suppose, in a way, aware of the fact that for us, it's an adventure. It was a bit like acting in a movie all the time, because that's that movie thing in America also.
Things got a bit dark. Things got a bit dark, I think, when you started heading down through Texas and Tennessee, and that seemed quite alarming.
Yes, America. Now we were there. End of 21, beginning of 22. This was in the interim period before the two Trump eras. But that was what shocked us so much, because everywhere, and we chose the South because of the weather, because it was winter. Once again, we couldn't go and tour in the North and Chicago and so in a camper van and get stuck in snow. We did get snow anyway in the South, but so we chose the South. And the southern states of America is Trump country. And we were actually quite shocked by how loudly, in this interim period when it was almost unthinkable for us that Trump would become president once again, I mean, don't they ever learn? It was on all the lawns you see these huge, not billboards, signs that people have on their in front of their houses saying, I voted for Trump in 22 and I'll vote for Trump again in 24. And that and huge billboards, it's really the country of billboards, and the overwhelming omnipresence of weapons, of guns, huge billboards, advertising guns and gun dealers, usually just after a religious billboard. Because you have 3 in a row. So you would have, do you have a problem with alcohol? It's in bold letters. Jesus will save you. And the next billboard is the gun dealer. Buy your guns here. And then the next one would be the closest gambling station. We can go and gamble and get rid of all your... So it was this dichotomy, this thing that you can't understand. Where does it come from? How do you have the religion, you have the guns, you have the gambling, and kind of a very conservative thing, which made us quite queasy at times. It's fascinating. It's a fascinating place. The people are so friendly, but you just stay on the... when the gas stations, where you all from, and they talk, but you don't go into religion or politics. We're just friendly, and we speak to the people, because they have Make America Great caps, they have guns in the holsters,
and they've got weapons at home.
Yes, and the Confederate flags. So there are all these things that are actually quite scary, but friendly, superficially, incredibly friendly.
So there's so many more places you obviously went to in America, and then you're about to turn around and come back to Europe and South Africa. And I just want you to do this very quick reading, because what you start to pick up in Marita's writing is just a very subtle change, a change in her outlook, a change in her concerns, etc. So if you would just read that short reading for us, because I think it's an important part of your story.
Thanks. What I also did write through is, because I'm a writer, I follow the footsteps of other writers. Not literally the footsteps, but whenever I go to a place, if I read what another writer has said about that, it makes me somehow kind of feel at home. So that's a thread through what other writers have said. And then, of course, the music and the paintings and so on. But, okay, this one was, it started with We Know Nothing. Yeah. This is in the north of France, in the Somme Valley, where you become very, very aware of the devastation of war if you travel through there. So, we know nothing. This is a village called Peronne. We know nothing of Peronne's violent history. We pull up in the town square simply because we have an Italian friend in Provence whose surname sounds almost the same. This is the hospitable Armando Peroni, who hosted us on the first night of our journey for that famous meal with fresh figs from the market. And we know he will appreciate a postcard from the French Peron. Coincidence, again, that leads us to yet another discovery along the way. Because while we're drinking coffee at an outdoor cafe on the square, we read a little about the town's past, and what we learn makes us look around in astonishment. Even my Frenchman, who lost millions of his compatriots in the wars of the past century, who grew up, as it were, surrounded by war cemeteries, he comes from the north of France, and the remnants of battlefields, shakes his head in disbelief. It's bad enough for any town to be destroyed in a war, but Peronne has been destroyed and rebuilt multiple times since the Vikings first set it alight and plundered it in the Middle Ages. It was badly damaged by the Spanish occupation during the 30 Years' War of the 17th century, and then destroyed by the Germans 3 times in a row in 1870, in 1970 during the World War I, and in 1940 by the Nazi Air Force. These last 3 wars in particular, all within 70 years of each other, fire up my imagination. Imagine you were a child who was lucky enough to survive the attacks in 1870. I muse over my coffee. Even though you probably lost your house and several of your relatives, then you'd have been middle-aged in World War I when you lost everything again. My Frenchman says nothing, just stares at the Catholic church across from us, a Gothic building that has survived 5 centuries of destruction and restoration. And imagine you kept living here despite everything. I continue. As an elderly person during World War II, you could have lost all your worldly goods again. And what was left of your family? We tread lightly when we stroll through the town after our coffee. It feels like we're walking on graves. In Peronne, the role of chance in our lives really blindsides me. Suddenly, everything seems coincidental. Not just this unplanned visit to the town, but also where and when and where we were born. Chance determines whether we lose all our possessions in a war or a natural disaster, or whether we will have the luxury of deciding that we want to part with and what we still want to cling to. This journey, this expedition, this quest, whatever you want to call it, is increasingly becoming a journey towards acceptance of all the things I cannot control. I no longer want to dwell on what I have lost. I rather want to appreciate what I still have. I want to let myself be swept along by chance. Like an ocean current, when you're scared you may drown. I want to stop struggling and trust the current to wash me up on a safe shore.
Lovely. And so it washed you up in many more places, which you will read in the book. And I don't want to run out of time describing these extraordinary scenes that you went through. But you do return to South Africa with new eyes, don't you? And finally, Alain can tour with you because he isn't tied to a school timetable. So off you took him to the Karoo. Of course.
Yes, of course. Also Eastern Cape, but Karoo is always... He's been with me to South Africa a few times, but always for short periods. And then we had 3 months, and we could really do road trips, various road trips through the Karoo, because you need time for this. You can't just whiz through the Karoo and spend a one night there and think you know the Karoo. After weeks there, you still don't really know it, but you get to know. And that was one of the wonderful things about traveling with somebody with a foreigner, my travel partner, my life partner. He gives me I look through his eyes. So it's like I have a double vision while I travel. On the one hand, I see things through his eyes, and it's kind of new, and he has a wonder about things that I'm blasé about, like the baboons you get in the mountain passes in Cape Town and the penguins, and everything excites him. So that's wonderful. You also have, at the same time, you have your own, my love of this country, which is irrational. It's subjective. I can't look through his eyes. I look through his eyes, but I know certain things I love with a deep, subjective, irrational, inexplicable, hopeless love. And you have those two things.
There's a lovely scene where they're sitting on a stoep. She taught him what stoep sit means. And they're somewhere eating jaffles. And you, Marita, you see the image of a girl across the lake, and you wave. And Alain says to you, "What are you waving at?" And you said, "I'm waving at the child I used to be."
Yes, because I got this impression. That was in Nelspruit area, where I spent 2 years in a boarding school. Not very happy years. Lovely surroundings. And I wrote a book, Childish Things, Die Dinge van 'n Kind, which is kind of set in that area. And quite by chance, once again, serendipity, as we were there was a TV series made of this Dinge van 'n Kind, dubbed in English, and it started showing on that week, so Alain could watch it with me. So we went there, and it was just this thing of, sometimes, it was like, I saw this girl, and she was saying, not drowning, just waving.
Absolutely. So where have you, let's shortcut here, where have you ended up now?
So after our peregrinations and lots of adventures, we, by chance, once again, I'm sorry that I have to say that all again, but so many things. Somebody who read travel, I was writing columns for Daily Maverick, for Litnet, and so on while we were traveling. And somebody, a South African who lives in Amsterdam, contacted me and said, they have this little cottage, very simple little cottage in the Périgord area, Dordogne, in that. And it's standing empty because their family, like many South African families, are all over the world. There's a brother in America, and she's in Amsterdam, and then there's the mother in Cape Town. And they can't rent it out because it's too simple, according to her. It's very basic, and there's no mod cons, but we're welcome to go and stay there if we pass through there. And I said, okay, so she showed me some pictures, and it was this lovely stone cottage without a washing machine or gadgets or microwave and all those things. Very simple two-plate plate. But remember, by that time we've been living out of a car, basically, for 8 months.
Luxury.
So, yes, so this looked like luxury to us. And we spent about 3 weeks there, and in those 3 weeks, then I negotiated with her to stay longer and then at least pay the electricity and the water and so on, because we fell in love with this Périgord area and we wanted to get to know more. And we were curious about Dordogne, but if this little house didn't happen like that out of the blue, we wouldn't have got to know this place. And we really had this feeling that this is where we're getting to this place where both me and the Frenchman, where all our efforts to escape, to get away, might be ceasing, because that's, for me, in many ways, it feels that's what my life has been like. I always want to be somewhere else. Since I was small, I want to be somewhere else. And I know that I have to settle down, maybe just temporarily, but in a place not only for myself, but also for my partner. And I think we found it in Périgord, because then we liked it so much that we decided to rent a place for longer before we think of buying, because it's easy to fall in love with any place in summer. You have to live through the winter, the seasons. And we did it. And yes, what's not in the book, but we actually just recently bought a small little cottage there, and we are in Perigord area now.
Wonderful. I think I'm going to open this up to the floor, and I'm sure there are questions that you'd like to ask Marita about your travels, where she's been, what scenes have stayed on so vividly for you, which I'd like to get to. Do you want to pass the microphone around? Would you like to put your hands up if there are any questions?
To ask you, Marita, when you write, do you write primarily in English and then it translates to Afrikaans, or do you write in Afrikaans like this book?
No, I write in Afrikaans, and I have the translator Annelies Visser has translated, I think it's a 7th book of mine. So that works very well, because I want the English and the Afrikaans to be published together, because as you all know, it's even more difficult to sell English books in South Africa than to sell Afrikaans books. So in this way, the English book can ride the wave of the publicity and so on for the Afrikaans. But with this one, what is interesting is some of the columns that I was writing while we were traveling, and it became a story. I used them as building stones, so to build something, or a little bit of a foundation. But some of the columns were food columns I wrote for Daily Maverick in English. So in a way, then I had to kind of retranslate back to Afrikaans that, and then Annelies retranslated it into English again. But it wasn't, I never used a full column, for instance, that I wrote, but I would take bits out. For instance, the 2nd chapter about the fig trees, farewell to a fig tree, how sad I was to leave my fig tree that I planted. The building blocks was a column I wrote for Daily Maverick's food pages.
I'm interested in your timeline, because the last time I saw you was for Still Breathing. Thank you for writing that, by the way. And so what was your journey? Because, that wasn't so long ago.
Yes.
And now you have this one.
Yes, I was writing while we were traveling. I was writing Still Breathing, Laaste Kans in Afrikaans. But there were 3 periods in these 15 months where we were at one place with a bed standing still and a chair for a month at a time. One was in Lesbos, so there I could write a chapter. One was in Cape Town at some stage. We had an Airbnb place and we could write. And then, in America, of course, when we were house sitting and it snowed and it was terrible. North Carolina was supposed to have very mild winters, and we've got the worst winter that it's had in decades, and we literally snowed in the house. So all my excuses to not write disappeared under the snow outside, and there I could also write for about a month every day. So that was, I could write chapters like that of that book while we were traveling, 21, 22. And it was published in 24 finally.
You never stop.
No, 23, sorry.
Any other questions? Anyone else? Yes?
I would like to know, why didn't you include some kind of map of your travels?
Or photographs. I wish there'd been budget for photographs.
Oh, what? The photographs?
Yeah.
Yeah.
Do you have them on a site?
I have a Facebook group and also Instagram. My Instagram name is Faking French. And I also have a Marita van der Vyver official group. And what I do now, each time there's a launch or so, I place a few pictures, a few snaps from our journey, instead of just, because I get so bored with myself, and I think, what must all the other followers or readers think? Each time it's just, now I have a launch here, and now I have a launch there, and just placing the picturing the cover of the book. So now I try and do. But it was a very deliberate decision not to include any visuals, because I start the book by talking about the morality of travel. Nowadays, the first sentence, travel and see the world, stay at home and save the world. That thing. So, as a thinking writer, you have to be aware of that what you're doing while you travel is also messing up this planet we live on. And the whole world, mass tourism has become a threat. And we've all become travelers on social media. So what we do, we share. We've all travel journalists now through pictures. We play safe selfies and videos, and we show me in front of the Eiffel Tower and me in front of there. And we share things that we've all been to or seen. It's just that now we're also in the picture. So I was asking myself very seriously, is there still a place for travel writing, not showing pictures, to actually write about it? Because the pictures we can see all the time. So that was a challenge to me, to not have any pictures in the book. A picture, we all know a picture paints 1,000 words. It's relatively easy. You put a picture on there. But the challenge as a writer is to put it in words. The map you can follow because you can go on internet and you can see, the places are very clearly named. In the first version of the book, the first draft, I was more vague about certain places, and that was one of the outside reader, the editor, told me, you must be, so that people can follow actually where we. So I very clearly note the places.
And this is a good time to talk about the Spotify. The
playlist.
Yeah, the playlist.
Yes. So we listen to a lot of music. And then one of the first readers of the book is the Afrikaans book journalist Corneels Breitenbach. Now, he's also a music journalist, many of you would know. And he said, but this book needs a playlist. And it was obviously you listen to a lot of music. And then when I finally started compiling this, I realized for Still Breathing, I also had a short little playlist, but it was a few songs that were mentioned in the book. For this one, it's like 9 hours of music, of rock, of soul, of blues, on the blues route, of... if you listen to it chronologically, you can almost listen to it while you're reading the book, or you can just do it randomly when you're on a road trip, because there's a little bit of Greek music when we're in Greek, and of course South African music when we're in South Africa, and lots of rock and roll when we're in America. And it's on Spotify or on YouTube, for those who are not on Spotify, and it is with the Afrikaans title, My Jaar van Vrees en Vryheid / My Year of Fear and Freedom. And you can go and listen to it.
It's a fantastic playlist, it really is. Before I wrap up, can we meet Alain, seeing as he's here?
He is here, and he's delighted that for once he can understand, because so far it seems standing there in the loud T-shirt I bought him. So far, all our launches have been in Afrikaans, and he is so loyal and so lovely. He's always there. He pretends he's my bodyguard, and when people laugh, he laughs, and he pretends he understands. But I think just from force of hearing the language so much, he is actually beginning to understand. But tonight he can understand everything.
Good, I'm so pleased. He's the hero of the story. So,
yes,
Elna.
Any chance of buying a little cottage in Peru at a later stage? If ever I have enough money, and I don't think writers, I can't say if all of you buy the book, I'm still not going to have enough money, but I would having a second home has never been an option for me. I've been a journalist and a writer and living van die hand na die mond, as they say. So yes, if I had the money, I would love to have either in the Karoo or on the West Coast, close to the sea, because that's my other heart place.
Marita, I'm sure you're aware of how your thousands of followers, how relieved we are to see that you came through it all, that Alain is well, that your children are all well, and that soon you'll be cooking Christmas dinners again. And I just think we're all so happy for you. So thank you.
Thank you all.
So Marita will be very happy to sign your books through at the back. Thank you. Thanks very much for coming.